Chapter 302. After the 7 half-step Earth Immortals unleashed a joint attack that exceeded their limit, not only did they fail to kill Su Qin, they couldn't even injure him. This was something that none of the half-step Land Immortals had expected. Their attack just now had definitely reached the threshold of an Earth Immortal. Even if Su Qin was lucky enough to survive, he must have been seriously injured. How could he be fine now? Something's not right. He's different. Only Green Radiance Shaman Master's expression changed as he looked at Su Qin in disbelief. Even though Su Qin's appearance didn't change, there were subtle differences. It was this subtle change that caused Su Qin's aura to change. He was like a sun that was emitting endless light, burning eternally. Especially in the depths of Su Qin's eyes, there was a faint image of a sun. It made Green Radiance Shaman Master feel like he was facing the real sun. But how was this possible? The sun was high up in the sky. Even in the previous era of the recovery of vital qi, when there were strong practitioners who crossed the strong winds and headed to the void outside the domain, they never got close to the sun. Just as the 7 half-step Land Immortals were bewildered, Su Qin's aura started to rise infinitely. Terrifying qi and blood filled every inch of the air, making Green Radiance Shaman Master and the rest breathless. We can't wait any longer. The Kuragenkyo's first ancestor struggled to break free. Even though he didn't know what had happened to Su Qin, what they needed to do now was to stop Su Qin from increasing his aura. Otherwise, Su Qin wouldn't even need to make a move. If this continued for an hour, they wouldn't even have the ability to resist when the joint attack ended. Curtain of Darkness. The Kuragenkyo's first ancestor raised his right hand. In an instant, dense darkness shrouded them. Curtain of Darkness was a secret technique of the Kuragenkyo. It was a kind of divine art that was taken from a nightmare. With first ancestor's current abilities, once he executed Curtain of Darkness, even a half-step Land Immortal's mind would become unstable and might even get lost. After all, first ancestor's abilities had already reached the threshold of a Land Immortal under the amplification of the combined attack technique. Every move of his was enough to shake the world and crush everything. Boring. Su Qin's eyes were calm. Now that he had entered the state of the Gold Crow, under the coverage of his enormous perception, everything in the world could be seen clearly in his eyes. Su Qin stretched out his hands and casually grasped the curtain of darkness that was falling down. Then he gently spread it to the sides. Rip! There was the sound of air being torn apart. The pitch-black curtain of darkness was torn in two by Su Qin's hands like a piece of cloth. In the eyes of outsiders, it was as if the entire space was being torn apart by Su Qin's hands. It was a shocking sight. How is this possible? The Kuragenkyo's first ancestor suffered a backlash and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, compared to the shock in his heart, the injuries on his corporeal body were nothing. First ancestor looked at the collapsing curtain of darkness and felt a chill down his spine. He was in disbelief. The curtain of darkness was formless and formless. Even the power of the primordial spirit couldn't lock onto it. However, it was being torn apart by Su Qin's hands. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, first ancestor wouldn't have believed it even if he died on the spot. 10,000 lightning, guide. Just as the Kuragenkyo's first ancestor was filled with shock, another voice rang out. Ancestor Lightning's expression was solemn as he spat out these 3 words with great difficulty. All of a sudden, the dark clouds exploded. 10,000 bolts of lightning seemed to have transformed into lightning dragons. They roared towards the sky and swooped down towards Su Qin. 1,000 Lightning Guide was already Raytheon's forbidden technique. As for 10,000 Lightning Guide, only Land Immortals of the Lightning Dao had the ability to execute it. Ancestor Lightning took advantage of the state of the combination technique. He had already crossed the threshold of Land Immortals to execute this move. Otherwise, without the combination technique, Ancestor Lightning's corporeal body and primordial spirit would have been torn apart by the enormous power of lightning the moment he wanted to summon the 10,000 lightning. However, Ancestor Lightning paid such a price to release 10,000 Lightning Guide. Its power was indeed destructive. If it wasn't for the fact that they were thousands of miles high in the sky, it would have been enough to turn a radius of hundreds of miles into a dead zone. Rumble. 10,000 bolts of lightning roared in unison. Heaven and earth seemed to have turned into a sea of lightning. How is he going to face this world-destroying lightning? When Green Radiance Shaman Master saw this, he immediately stared at the center of the sea of lightning. Even if Su Qin had displayed the power to tear the curtain of darkness apart, the 10,000 lightning guide summoned by Ancestor Lightning was simply too terrifying. Even a true land immortal would have to retreat in the face of this move, right? Ancestor Snow muttered to himself. Although land immortals were strong, they were not fools. How could they withstand the power of 10,000 lightning bolts? With the means of land immortals, there were countless ways to avoid the sharpness of 10,000 lightning guide. However, the next moment, under everyone's incredulous gaze, the sea of lightning quickly dissipated as if it was constantly being devoured by an abyss. A moment later, when the last bolt of lightning entered Su Qin's body, everyone suddenly reacted. Didn't Lei Xing tell you that lightning is useless to me? Su Qin shook his head slightly. As early as decades ago, Su Qin could bathe in the sea of lightning with the 5 Thunder God fist, let alone now. If Su Qin could ignore most of the fire element killer moves in the world with the Golden Crow Divine Body, even ordinary heavenly lightning would not be a threat to Su Qin except for the real 9th Heaven Divine Thunder. Oh! By the way, Lei Xing is dead, so I naturally can't tell you. Su Qin suddenly thought of something. He looked at Ancestor Lightning with a smile on his face and said, "Now, it's your turn." Before his voice died away, Su Qin's figure had already disappeared. Oh no! Ancestor Lightning's figure suddenly retreated, his face livid. He thought that the 10,000 lightning guide that he released at a huge cost could suppress Su Qin, but in the end, it was all devoured. Not only did it not have the effect of suppressing, but it also seemed to have replenished the opponent's consumption. Buzz. The next moment, Su Qin's figure had already appeared 10 meters away from Ancestor Lightning. 10 meters was a distance that even an ordinary person could cross with a leap, let alone the many experts present. It's over. Ancestor Lightning saw this scene and felt as if he had fallen into an abyss. According to the strength Su Qin had just shown, no matter how confident Ancestor Lightning was, he did not think that he could block Su Qin. Although he had the blessing of the joint attack and all the injuries he suffered would be distributed to the other 6, he would have to bear at least 50% of the injuries. Just as Su Qin's palm fell, Ancestor Lightning closed his eyes and waited for death. A man in a shaman's robe suddenly stood in front of the lightning ancestor. Then his body suddenly expanded, and the terrifying power of blood qi filled the air. He actually managed to block Su Qin's palm strike. When Ancestor Lightning saw this scene, he immediately retreated a few miles away and looked at Su Qin as if he had escaped from a tiger's mouth. Dharma body? Su Qin glanced at Green Mang Magus Lord and a smile appeared on his face. The one who blocked his palm was Green Mang Magus Lord. At this moment, Green Mang Magus Lord's robe had long been torn, and his qi and blood began to surge like an ocean. It was a Dharma body that only Earth immortals could have. Witchcraft is good at physical bodies. As early as thousands of years ago, I had half a step into the realm of Dharma bodies with the divine medicine left by witchcraft. Now, with the help of the joint attack, I barely entered the realm of Dharma bodies. Compared to you, Daoist friend, it's not worth mentioning, Green Mang Magus Lord said with a calm expression. Among the many exalted sects overseas, some were good at swords, some were good at sabers, some were good at thunder techniques, and some were good at alchemy. However, witchcraft was good at physical bodies. Oh! Su Qin shook his head and said non-committally, "You shouldn't be able to live for long if you completely circulate your qi and blood, right? If Green Mang Magus Lord Shoyuan had enough, it would not be a problem to circulate his qi and blood. Just like Su Qin, he could attack without restraint. However, the Green Radiant Sorcerer Master had been sleeping for thousands of years. He did not have much lifespan left to begin with, and his qi and blood had already declined to the lowest point after thousands of years. Under such circumstances, if he continued to circulate his qi and blood with all his might, even with the help of the combined attack technique, he would still be courting death. If I don't do anything, we'll still die when you kill Ancestor Lightning and break the joint attack. Green Mang Magus Lord said softly. The 7 half-step Earth Immortals could barely resist Su Qin with the help of the joint attack. Without the joint attack, they would be killed in an instant by Su Qin. In that case, let me see your witchcraft body. Su Qin smiled and took a step forward. He appeared in front of Green Mang Magus Lord and threw a punch. Whether it was the Ancestor Lightning or the Kuragenkyo's first ancestor, they were all using long-range attacks to deal with Su Qin. This made Su Qin a little angry. Although those long-range attacks could not do anything to him, how could it be as satisfying as close combat? Seeing this, Green Mang Magus Lord could only brace himself and fight. Boom, boom. In just an instant, the Green Mang Magus Lord was suppressed to an absolute disadvantage. If not for the fact that he had used the secret arts of the witchcraft sect, coupled with the art of combined attack that could disperse the power of Su Qin's attack, the Green Mang Magus Lord would have been suppressed on the spot. Let's restrict him. Ancestor Snow and the others from the Snow God Palace immediately took action when they saw this. Ancestor Snow summoned a layer of ice and snow to reduce the temperature within dozens of miles in an attempt to restrict Su Qin's speed. Meanwhile, the medicine master of the Medicine God sect took out a black elixir and threw it at Su Qin. He said in a low voice, "Explode." Suddenly, a terrifying poison spread out. The poison did not affect the body but the vital spirit. The Medicine God sect was an alchemy sect that could make countless spirit pills that could increase one's cultivation level and save one's life. They could also make poisonous pills that could take one's life. However, unfortunately, all the means of the 6 half-step Earth Immortals continued to weaken when they were within 100 feet of Su Qin. By the time they landed on Su Qin's body, their power was already reduced to nothing under the vast blood qi. Awesome! Su Qin and Green Mang Magus Lord were entangled in a fierce battle. Su Qin's moves were very simple. His punches and kicks did not have the slightest ingenuity, but they carried a faint ancient aura. Even though Green Mang Magus Master relied on his Dharma body, combined attack technique, and the other 6 half-step Earth Immortals to restrain him, he gradually fell into an absolute disadvantage. Although the Dharma body was powerful, Su Qin's Golden Crow Divine Body had surpassed the ordinary Dharma body. With just the Golden Crow Divine Body, he could challenge a real Earth Immortal. How could an ordinary Dharma body compare to him? In the end, Su Qin threw a punch. Under the desperate gaze of Green Mang Magus Lord, the punch penetrated his chest and shot into the sky. With one punch, Green Mang Magus Lord was dead. P.S. More tomorrow. Chapter 303. He's too powerful. The remaining 6 half-step land immortals trembled as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. They thought they could easily suppress Su Qin after using the combined attack technique. After all, the 7 half-step land immortals had already crossed the threshold of a true land immortal. However, they did not expect Su Qin to be so powerful that he could ignore their attacks and directly punch through Qing Mang Grand Magus Master. How could they fight? No matter how they attacked, they could not affect Su Qin. However, Su Qin could easily kill Qing Mang Grand Magus Master, who had the strongest body among the 7, with just one punch. Facing such an expert made them feel hopeless. Your body? Qing Mang Grand Magus Master's body exploded, but his primordial spirit barely managed to gather together. Even after Kanzu's body died of old age, his primordial spirit could survive for so many years. He could even possess another body, let alone Qing Mang Grand Magus Master, who was more powerful than Kanzu. However, it was precisely because of this that Qing Mang Grand Magus Master realized how powerful Su Qin's body was. With the support of the joint attack technique, his physical body had barely entered the conjured physique domain. His vital energy and blood were strong. However, he was undoubtedly at an absolute disadvantage when facing Su Qin's punches and kicks. In the end, Su Qin's punch even penetrated his physical body. What did this mean? It meant that Qing Mang Grand Magus Master was completely defeated in the battle with Su Qin's body. The so-called Dharma body was far inferior to Su Qin's body at this moment. You talk too much. Su Qin glanced at Qing Mang Grand Magus Master, raised his right hand again, and pressed down on him. Since Qing Mang Grand Magus Master chose to attack, he was already a dead man in Su Qin's eyes. Of course, he would not hold back. Rumble. Su Qin pressed down with his palm. It was as if the sun had fallen. Even if Qing Mang Grand Magus Master's body and primordial spirit were still intact, he would not be able to withstand it. Buzz! Under everyone's incredulous gaze, Qing Mang Grand Magus Master's primordial spirit quickly dissipated. And at this moment, many legends who were watching the battle from afar in Chang and city were stunned. For ordinary people, it was impossible to see anything clearly from a distance of a few thousand meters, but the vision of a legend was extremely sharp. Coupled with the coverage of a legend's divine sense, even if they could not get close to the battlefield, they could still vaguely discern the extent of the situation just by relying on the aura that leaked out. Witchcraft's Green Mango Shaman Lord has fallen? Some of the disciples from the major sects were dumbfounded. Even though several thousand years had passed, the reputation of the Green Radiance Shaman Master was still circulating among the major sections. Now, in the face of the fall of this legendary figure, especially at the hands of Su Qin, everyone had the illusion that their beliefs had been shattered. Compared to the many legends in Chang and city, the remaining 6 half-step land immortals on the battlefield were completely terrified. Once the Green Mang Shaman Lord was completely dead, it meant that their original joint attack technique was missing a link. This missing link could be slowly made up under normal circumstances, but at this moment, how could Su Qin give them the time to make up for it? To put it simply, the fall of the Green Mango Shaman Lord had led to the complete collapse of the joint attack technique. In an instant, the world-shaking aura that was comparable to an land immortals suddenly dropped and finally divided into 6 weakened auras. Everyone, Green Mango is dead. If we continue to hold back, I'm afraid we'll all die. The Kuragenkyo's first ancestor took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. At this moment, none of the 6 half-step land immortals thought of escaping. Not to mention whether they could escape or not, even if they were lucky enough to escape, what about the major sects behind them? They could escape, but the major sects were there and had almost never changed their positions for thousands of years. Therefore, not only for themselves, but also for their respective sects, they had to fight to the death. Humph! Not far away, the lightning ancestor snorted coldly. Just now, the Green Mango Shaman Lord had blocked Su Qin's palm for him. At this moment, the lightning ancestor had finally recovered. Thunder! The lightning ancestor's eyes were solemn. In a trance, a fist-sized thunder appeared above his head. As soon as the lightning seal appeared, it exuded an extremely terrifying lightning aura. It was as if the fist-sized lightning seal contained a vast sea of lightning as vast as the ocean. Raytheon's heavenly thunder seal? I didn't expect the lightning ancestor to bring such a powerful weapon with him. The medicine god sect's medicine master's eyes suddenly narrowed. The heavenly thunder seal was a dharma treasure passed down by Raytheon from the previous Vitality Tide era. Legend had it that a Thunder Dao land immortal went deep into the Sea of Thunder and absorbed the chi of heavenly thunder. It took him 200 years to refine it. In addition, after Raytheon, all the land immortals had refined it with their own blood. It could be said that the heavenly thunder seal had reached a certain level and was the most powerful dharma treasure below the cardinal treasures. As the lightning ancestor took out the heavenly thunder seal, the other 5 half-step land immortals did the same. The snow ancestor of the snow god palace took out a miniature palace. The miniature palace spun and shone with layers of light, protecting the snow ancestor tightly. The medicine god sect's medicine master took out a medicine cauldron. There seemed to be flames burning in it and a faint pill fragrance leaked out. Hee hee. A cold smile appeared on Su Qin's face. It's too late to use these trump cards now. If the 6 half-step land immortals used all their trump cards without hesitation before the death of the Green Mang Magus Lord, they might still be no match for Su Qin. However, they would at least have a chance to escape. Among the 7 of them, perhaps one or two of them would be able to escape with a wisp of their essence soul. But now, without the support of the joint attack technique, the power of these Dharma treasures would be greatly reduced even if they were used. How could they threaten Su Qin? In the next moment, Su Qin took a step forward. His qi and blood surged like an ocean. The origin energy of fire within a few hundred miles started to vibrate. The entire world seemed to have turned into a huge furnace. Thunder, come! The lightning ancestor's eyes flickered. He summoned an even greater thunderbolt with the heavenly thunder seal and fell on Chang and city. At this moment, the lightning ancestor, who was in despair, suddenly thought of using Chang and city to threaten Su Qin. However, before the thunderbolt summoned by the lightning ancestor could take shape, "You're courting death." A trace of coldness appeared on Su Qin's face. He crossed a few miles in an instant and came in front of the lightning ancestor. He clenched his fist and punched. This time, no one blocked Su Qin's attack for the lightning ancestor. The terrifying power directly penetrated the heavenly thunder seal and sent the fist-sized thunder seal flying. Then, the remaining power smashed the horrified lightning ancestor into pieces. His body and essence soul were reduced to nothingness. Then, Su Qin took a deep breath and swallowed the vast thunder that was originally summoned by the heavenly thunder seal into his mouth. With just one punch, the lightning ancestor, who was holding the Raytheon heavenly thunder seal, had completely died. He didn't even have a chance to possess his body. However, that was not the end. After killing the lightning ancestor, Su Qin disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was standing not far from Ancestor Snow in the Snow God Palace. Oh no! Ancestor Snow in the Snow God Palace was still shocked by the death of the lightning ancestor. When she found that Su Qin was close to her, she was scared out of her wits. The miniature palace above her head spun quickly. Boom! Su Qin punched again and shook the miniature palace. The terrifying power of the punch also shattered Ancestor Snow's body and essence soul. Clatter! Su Qin pressed his hand and the medicine cauldron in front of the medicine master of the medicine god sect shattered. Compared to the heavenly thunder seal and the snow ancestor's miniature palace, this medicine cauldron was not a defensive Dharma treasure. How could it block Su Qin's punch? In the blink of an eye, the medicine master followed in the footsteps of the lightning ancestor and the snow ancestor. His body and essence soul were completely shattered. Then, another half-step Earth Immortal's body began to shatter before he could even make a sound. In the end, he turned into dust along with his essence soul. This half-step Earth Immortal was the weakest among the seven. He wasn't even as strong as the medicine master. If he wasn't the furthest away from Su Qin, he would have already died. But even so, he couldn't escape death. What? The Kuragenkyo's first ancestor widened his eyes and looked at Su Qin in horror. Ever since the death of the Green Glow Magus Master, 5 half-step Earth Immortals had died in a short period of time. The 7 half-step Earth Immortals who had joined forces and were confident of victory were slaughtered like chickens in front of Su Qin. In the blink of an eye, he was the only one left. It was terrifying to the extreme. Although part of the reason was that the joint attack technique was broken, it was still a half-step Earth Immortal. Even if a real Earth Immortal were to kill 5 half-step Earth Immortals with perfected nascent divinity and true energy, that would be the most he could do. 5 half-step Earth Immortals. Even if they were facing a real Earth Immortal, they wouldn't be defeated like this. At least 1 or 2 of them would be able to escape. Although they would still be hunted down by the Earth Immortal. Who are you? Why are you not an Earth Immortal but have the ability to fight with an Earth Immortal? The Kuragenkyo's first ancestor calmed himself down and asked in a trembling voice. At his level, he had not felt despair for many years. However, at this moment, the Kuragenkyo's first ancestor felt as if he had returned to the time when he was still a grade 9 martial artist. He was terrified and powerless when he met a legend at the peak of the Essence Soul realm. The Kuragenkyo's first ancestor was very sure that Su Qin was not an Earth Immortal. Not only him, but half-step Earth Immortals such as the Green Glow Magus Master, the Medicine Master of the Medicine God Sect, and the Snow Ancestor of the Snow God Palace also confirmed this. Otherwise, if they realized that Su Qin was an earth immortal, they would have knelt down and begged for mercy. How could they dare to continue resisting? Although there was only a half-step difference between a half-step earth immortal and a real earth immortal, the gap in strength was like a natural chasm. However, from the beginning to the end, Su Qin did not have the majestic aura of being one with heaven and man like an earth immortal who could communicate with the sea of vitality. One had to know that any earth immortal had experienced the fusion of their primordial spirit into the sea of vitality in the depths of the void and could naturally guide the sea of vitality. However, Su Qin did not. It was obvious that he had never fused his primordial spirit into the sea of vitality. If he couldn't do this, it meant that Su Qin was not an earth immortal. No matter how deep Su Qin went in the myth realm, he was only a half-step earth immortal. His strength was similar to theirs. However, what the Xianxia's first ancestor did not expect was that although Su Qin was not an earth immortal, his methods were not weaker than ordinary earth immortals. It was simply unbelievable. Even during the peak of the previous vitality tide, such an inconceivable thing had never happened before. If an earth immortal could be surpassed so easily, could he still be called an earth immortal? Go to hell. Su Qin naturally could not be bothered to answer the Xianxia's first ancestor's question. He directly threw out another punch. Under the state of the golden crow divine body, Su Qin's physical body had already surpassed an ordinary Dharma body. With just the strength of his physical body, he could compete with an earth immortal. With a punch and kick, he could kill a half-step earth immortal. Let's go all out. When the Xianxia's first ancestor saw this scene, his heart trembled. He immediately began to circulate the Xianxia's forbidden technique. In an instant, the Xianxia's first ancestor's body expanded several times. He was like a small giant more than 10 meters tall, and his terrifying aura was still increasing crazily. In the next moment, Su Qin's punch arrived. Kachakot. As if everything was shattering, the body of the Xianxia's first ancestor collapsed and quickly turned into nothingness. In Chang'an City, countless legends who were watching the battle fell into dead silence. They could not react for a long time. If 7 half-step earth immortals joined forces to kill Su Qin, it would be shocking enough. At least in the era when there were no earth immortals, such a scene had never happened before. After all, other than a real earth immortal, who else could be worthy of 7 half-step earth immortals joining forces? But now, not only did Su Qin block the 7 half-step earth immortals, but he also killed them in one fell swoop. The 7 half-step earth immortals were all killed, and not even a trace of their primordial spirits escaped. Even the Xianxia's first ancestor, who was known to be the best at escaping, was completely killed. It was simply shocking to the extreme. One must know that even in the era when earth immortals existed, it was impossible for so many half-step earth immortals to die. After all, the half-step earth immortals were not stupid. How could they offend an earth immortal? Since there was no conflict, the earth immortals naturally would not make a move. For earth immortals, they were already above all living beings. Unless it was necessary, they would not interfere in the secular world. Something big has happened, something big has happened. Some legends lowered their heads, not even daring to look up at Su Qin. Their hearts were in turmoil. The disciples of the major sects, in particular, lowered their heads deeply. Most of the glory of their sects had been obtained by their half-step earthly immortals. Now that these half-step earthly immortals had fallen, their glory was also gone. Some rogue cultivators were horrified when they saw this scene, and at the same time, they felt strange. For thousands of years, many of the major sects had been overlooking the living beings overseas like the heavens. But now, the fall of these half-step earth immortals was tantamount to a declaration to everyone. The era of the major sects had passed. Grandpa, what's the situation now? Puan. The tiger-faced little boy looked up at his grandpa. He tiptoed and looked at the sky. Unfortunately, he was not a legend. How could he see the situation thousands of meters above the ground? What's the situation? The old man in linen clothes lowered his head and stroked the little boy's head. He whispered in an inexplicable tone. He said in an inexplicable voice, The sky is falling. Chapter 304. The sky is collapsing. Although the old man's tone did not fluctuate violently, it contained an extremely complex emotion. Since the end of the previous vitality tide, the world's vitality chi had fallen silent and everything had withered for more than 10,000 years. But even so, many of the exalted sects overseas still stood above all living beings like the real heaven, overlooking all living beings. But now, with the fall of 7 half-step earth immortals, the exalted sects that symbolized the heaven of billions of living beings had truly collapsed. Not only the old man, but many other legends, including the disciples of the exalted sects and the nameless itinerant cultivators, were also shocked. Half-step earth immortals were dazzling in any era. Only the real earth immortals could suppress them. But now, 7 of them had fallen in a row. How could they not be shocked? How could they not be afraid? How could they not be afraid? Compared with the fear and uneasiness of many legends, the Tang Empire's side was in ecstasy. The commander of the Forbidden Army who had just entered the myth realm reported excitedly to the Emperor of Tang, "Your Majesty, the Imperial brother-in-law has won." Although the commander of the Forbidden Army had just entered the myth realm, he could still roughly sense the changes in the situation thousands of meters in the sky with his divine thought. Now, the auras of the 7 half-step earth immortals had all disappeared, leaving only Su Qin's aura. It was obvious that Su Qin had won. That's right. The 7 half-step earth immortals have fallen. The Lao Dao cultivator next to him bowed and said, "The commander of the Forbidden Army might not know the significance of this battle, but as an elder of the Daoist sect, how could the Lao Dao cultivator not know? Su Qin had killed 7 half-step earth immortals from many exalted sects by himself, which was equivalent to suppressing the entire overseas. From now on, who in the world could stop Su Qin? In addition, the Lao Dao cultivator was a little worried. The 7 half-step earth immortals had joined forces to kill Su Qin. Although the Daoist sect was not involved, the Lao Dao cultivator was still a little nervous before he figured out Su Qin's true attitude toward the Daoist sect. As for whether the Daoist sect could stop Su Qin, the Lao Dao cultivator had never thought about it. No matter how strong the Daoist sect was, it could not compare to the 7 half-step earth immortals. Even the 7 half-step earth immortals had fallen. What could the Daoist sect do? Unless the Dao One sect immediately gave birth to an earth immortal, they might have a chance to block it. However, the Dao One sect had not given birth to any earth immortals in the past few hundred or thousand years. How could one suddenly appear now? Moreover, even if the Daoist sect had an earth immortal, it was another matter whether they could stop Su Qin. After all, Su Qin had easily killed 7 half-step earth immortals. His strength might have reached the threshold of an earth immortal. What the Lao Dao cultivator did not know was that the 7 half-step earth immortals were still killed by Su Qin even after their strength had increased by a level after using a joint attack technique. If the Lao Dao cultivator knew about this, his evaluation of Su Qin would not be that he had reached the threshold of an earth immortal, but that he had definitely stepped into the realm of an earth immortal. I hope the Dao Master will admit defeat. Only then will we have a chance of survival. The Lao Dao cultivator thought to himself. The third brother one? The Emperor of Tang and Su Yueyun looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. He probed, will the exalted sects continue to take revenge on the third brother? The Emperor of Tang knew that the exalted sects overseas were extremely protective. Now that Su Qin had won, how could these exalted sects let it go so easily? Of course, the reason why the Emperor of Tang asked this was because he did not know the position of the 7 half-step earth immortals in the exalted sects. Although the Lao Dao cultivators of the Daoist sect and other overseas mythical martial artists who had sided with the Empire of Tang had already roughly told the Emperor of Tang some information about the exalted sects. However, there were very few half-step earth immortals. How high was a half-step earth immortal? Before today, no matter how bold the Lao Dao cultivators of the Daoist sect were, they would never have dared to imagine that one day, 7 half-step earth immortals would fall in the hands of Su Qin. Take revenge on His Excellency? The Lao Dao cultivator of the Daoist sect was slightly taken aback. He then shook his head and said, Those exalted sects are begging for mercy now. How would they dare to take revenge on His Excellency? The fall of 7 half-step Earth Immortals was definitely a heavy blow to many exalted sects. Even though other exalted sects such as witchcraft and Raytheon that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years still had other half-step Earth Immortals in hibernation, Su Qin had already killed 7 half-step Earth Immortals. It would be a piece of cake for him to kill a few more. How would these exalted sects dare to take revenge on Su Qin? Were they not afraid that they would end up like the Wanjian school, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years? While countless people were still in shock, Su Qin, who was standing thousands of meters above the ground, was much calmer. It was as if killing 7 half-step Earth Immortals was just a piece of cake for him. In fact, that was indeed the case. Now that Su Qin had formed the Golden Crow Divine Body, he was comparable to a real Earth Immortal with this extraordinary Dharma body. When he was fighting with the 7 half-step Earth Immortals, Su Qin had only used the power of his body. As for other means, he did not even use the eye divine power that was hidden in his eyes that was awakened along with the Golden Crow Divine Body. He had already held back a lot. Come here. With a thought, Su Qin summoned the heavenly thunder seal that was the size of a fist at the place where the lightning ancestor of Raytheon had fallen. It spun and quickly flew to Su Qin. This Dharma treasure is not bad. Su Qin glanced at the heavenly thunder seal and nodded slightly. Although there was a fist mark on the heavenly thunder seal that was left by Su Qin, it could not hide its essence. It should be known that with Su Qin's current body, it was already extremely rare for him to be able to withstand his punch and only leave a fist print behind. If I devour the lightning energy in this small seal, I'm afraid my 5 Thunder Divine Fist will be upgraded to another level. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. For the current Su Qin, the biggest use of this heavenly thunder seal was to boost the progress of the 5 Thunder Divine Fist. If Raytheon knew that the heavenly thunder seal that they had refined for tens of thousands of years was devoured by Su Qin, he would probably faint from heartache. Next, apart from the heavenly thunder seal, Su Qin also collected the Dharma treasures left behind by the other half-step Earth Immortals. As the strongest foundation of their respective sects, these half-step Earth Immortals naturally carried many Dharma treasures with them. However, most of the Dharma treasures were turned into dust by Su Qin's punches and kicks. Only a few Dharma treasures of sufficient quality like the heavenly thunder seal were left behind. What a pity about this cauldron. Su Qin glanced at the cauldron held by the medicine god sect's medicine master and shook his head slightly. He had been signing in for decades, but he did not obtain many cauldron Dharma treasures. Now that he finally saw one with decent quality, it was obviously a pity that it was shattered by Su Qin's punch. Just as Su Qin was counting his gains, far away from the empire of Tang, the sect masters of the various major sects gathered on a mountain peak. This time, when the half-step Earth Immortals of the sects attack together, even if that legend from the empire of Tang has the ability to reach the heavens, he will still die, the sect master of Raytheon said slowly. Naturally, they knew that 7 half-step Earth Immortals had joined forces to attack Xianxia city. That was why they gathered here and waited for the news of the destruction of the empire of Tang. This time, I, the thunder ancestor of Raytheon, paid a great price for the heavenly thunder seal. After today, I, Raytheon, will occupy Xianxia city. The sect master of Raytheon glanced at the other sect masters and said, in his opinion, it was only natural for the 7 half-step Earth Immortals to join forces and kill Su Qin. Once Su Qin was suppressed, the empire of Tang would inevitably collapse and become a place ruled by the major sections. At this time, in the eyes of the sect masters, the most important thing was how to divide the land of the great battle. Xianxia city? The rest of the sect masters frowned slightly when they heard this. Xianxia city was the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. It could be said that it was the core of the land of great battles. After the recovery of the essential qi tide, such a place would definitely bear the most benefits. This was clear when the source of fire element was born hundreds of miles away from Xianxia city when the essential qi tide first broke out. Obviously, none of the sect masters were willing to give up such a precious land to Raytheon. Daoist Raytheon, your thunder ancestor paid the price, but do you think my witchcraft's master Qing Mang didn't pay anything? The witchcraft sect master sneered. My witchcraft also wants Chang and city. As soon as he said that, the rest of the sect masters immediately spoke in unison. They all wanted to take Chang and city. With the half-step Earth Immortals backing them, none of the sect masters backed down. In the end, the sect masters jointly decided that each major sect would take control of a part of Chang and city and jointly rule the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. After dividing Chang and city, they began to divide the other parts of the Empire of Tang. The 102 states in the southwest belonged to my Kura Genkyo. The 113 states in the northeast belonged to my Snow God Palace. The 209 states in the southeast belonged to my witchcraft. In an instant, the sect masters had already divided the entire Tang Empire, leaving nothing behind. Then, they looked in the direction of Chang and city with anticipation. Judging by the time, the ancestor and the others should be back soon. They were located outside of the Empire of Tang and were hundreds of thousands of miles away from Chang and city. Naturally, they couldn't sense the battle that happened above Chang and city. Of course, in the sect master's opinion, they didn't need to sense it because the fate of the legend of the Empire of Tang had already been decided by the 7 half-step Earth Immortals. There was no other possibility. Just as the sect masters were waiting patiently, the sect master of Daoist sect suddenly said, "Are you so sure that the legend of the Empire of Tang will lose?" As soon as the sect master's voice fell, the sect master of the Black Sword sect immediately sneered, "Sect master, this time, our great sects have joined forces, but only your Daoist school has rejected this proposal. Then, the ownership of the land of great battle has nothing to do with you." Although the Daoist sect had been passed down from the previous Vitality Tide era and its foundation was far superior to the Kura Genkyo, the Daoist sect had already provoked the dissatisfaction of the other great sects because they didn't take action several times. Under the joint efforts of many great sects, even the Daoist sect couldn't get any benefits. Sect master, can't you see the situation clearly? Who in the world can stop the 9 half-step Earth Immortals when they join forces? How can the legend of the Empire of Tang not lose under such heavenly power? The Snow God Palace master shook his head slightly and looked at the sect master of Daoist sect sympathetically. Is that so? The sect master of Daoist sect looked calm, but there were waves in the depths of his eyes. Suddenly, at this moment, several escape lights sped out from the depths of the Empire of Tang and rushed toward the sect masters. Why is Qingzhou back? The sect master of Raytheon frowned when he noticed that one of the escape lights belonged to him, Raytheon, and it was his disciple. Wasn't Qingzhou, the disciple of Raytheon, supposed to be in charge of Chang and city? Why would he come here at this time? The other sect masters also noticed that their disciples were among the escape lights and they were puzzled. Could it be that the Patriarch wants us to move to Chang and city? The sect master of the Medicine God sect couldn't help but ask. The other sect masters nodded slightly when they heard this. Indeed, the sect master of the Medicine God sect's guess should be true. Otherwise, how could they explain why the disciples were rushing back? However, there were still a couple of headmasters that were puzzled. The reason for that was because they discovered that the speed of the few rays of light that had rushed back was abnormally fast. They ought to have disregarded the price and used all sorts of forbidden techniques to be able to reach that speed. If they were just sending a message back for the Patriarch, why would they be so desperate? One should know that although the forbidden techniques were effective, the consequences were severe. No martial artist would be willing to use the forbidden techniques unless it was a matter of life and death. A moment later, several escape lights had already arrived in front of the sect masters. Sect master. The disciple of Raytheon named Qingzhou immediately knelt in front of the sect master of Raytheon and cried, "Sect master, it's over. Everything is over. I Raytheon am finished." Their cries were so loud that they tore their lungs apart. It was extremely tragic. The sect master of Raytheon's face suddenly changed when he saw this. What happened? Where is the Patriarch of Raytheon? Did the Patriarch of Raytheon send you here? How is the situation in Chang and City? Has the legend of the Empire of Tang been killed? The sect master of Raytheon asked several questions in a row. At this moment, even though the sect master of Raytheon noticed that things had changed, he still didn't want to believe it and still had a glimmer of hope. The Patriarch of Raytheon? The disciple of Raytheon named Xianxia suddenly felt sad. He had seen the Patriarch of Raytheon being blown up by Su Qin's punch with his own eyes. Even the heavenly thunder seal was sent flying. At this moment, the sect master of Raytheon's question directly evoked this memory. Sect master. The Patriarch of Raytheon is dead. They're all dead. They're all dead. The disciple of Raytheon named Xianxia trembled all over, and his voice was extremely hoarse. The Patriarch of Raytheon is dead. The sect master of Raytheon trembled all over, and his mind went blank. He couldn't react for a long time. And at this moment, the voices of the other disciples who had escaped from Chang and City also sounded. Sect Master, the first ancestor has fallen. Sect Master, Shaman Master Qing Mang is also dead. Palace Master, Ancestor Xue has died. Many of the sect masters stood there dumbfounded. Their faces were pale and their bodies were trembling. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.